And here we go. It is another Pittsburgh Hockey Now live chat. Hola, I think, Dan Kingerski. Let's get rid of the logo there and let's get into this here. I know I did a video on Tuesday evening. We postponed all the questions until today. So you all get to jump in and guide this conversation. Of course, since then, the Penguins, geez, can you tell I've been in meetings all morning? I've had 3 already as we can complete this merger with the larger ad and web company. Going well, don't get me wrong. It's just meeting, send me this, need to do that. So let's get back into the hockey. Of course, since last night, the Anthony Mantha contract, the Pittsburgh Penguins 1-year deal. They gave him 2.5 as a base guarantee. But then I found this nice little wrinkle. According to Renaud Lavoie of RVA, TVA, another $2 million in incentives. We haven't gotten those incentives yet, but that's a chunk of change for Anthony Mantha coming off of a shortened season. November 5th, he tore his ACL, needed surgery, missed the remainder of the season. So that's what kind of fast forwards us to today. I didn't get a chance to finish the column because of the Mantha story. And then the other story, the Penguins re-signed goalie Taylor Gauthier. Well, the Wilkes-Barre Scranton Penguins re-signed him. That's an AHL deal that can quickly become an NHL deal, as if it ever merits that. They also signed Raphael Harvey-Pinard from the Montreal Canadiens, 2019 7th-round pick. He's one of those little engine that could kind of guys. He's all of 5'9", $180, just a ball of energy. Has played 84 NHL games, 31 points. I think he's got 19 goals in those 84 games. Not without talent. Only played 1 NHL game last season as Montreal's lineup was both sort of full, but also full with guys who are part of the future. So even if he were playing, well or better than some of the guys in the lineup, he wasn't going to crack the NHL roster last season. So that's what the Penguins did. They also signed right-handed defenseman Phil Kemp, career AHL guy, 4+ years, Bakersfield Condors. He's essentially taking the place of Dan Renouf, who signed in the German league already this offseason. Are you caught up now? Give me one moment here. I am going to share this on YouTube, just because I literally came running right over to the computer in the studio here to get this whole thing rolling. Didn't have a whole lot of time to prep it or blast it out. So I'm going to do that right now as we speak. Plus, you can line up your questions. I saw some questions already on Philip Hollander, which, yeah, he's probably he's going to factor in to this. He is also one of the reasons I am surprised at both signings, the Philip Tomasino signing, but also the Mantha signing. One of those two, but both is a little bit interesting to me, because it does seem to sort of overpack the roster as we speak. There we go, live now. Okay, now the Twidiots know that we're on the air, so to speak. Let's see here. I should do these a little bit in order, shouldn't I? Otherwise, we're going to be in trouble. Do me a favor. Let me know if the mic begins to cut out. I did isolate the problem, but I couldn't fix it between last night and today. Just I can go get. I have to actually go buy a new mixing board. I know. Didn't feel like dropping $300 this afternoon, but you all expect a little bit more, and I expect a bit more of me too. Okay, so if the sound starts cutting, let me know immediately. In the meantime, do me a favor, hit those little like buttons, share it around, and also make sure you're a follower or a subscriber of this here little YouTube channel. Whew. Have we got it all set up? So we are going to talk Tomasino. I think the signings today, all signs point to a Penguins trade. No ifs, no ands, no buts about it. And we're going to take a look at exactly where the Penguins lineup sets now that they've made a few more signings. So let's go to Brandon. Brandon, excited to hear your takes on free agency thus far. Uh, I I suppose, like everybody else, you always want the best, right? You'd like to see the Penguins in the mix for Mitch Marner or Sam Bennett or any of those other names that we probably watched leading up to the free agent frenzy. It's rather obvious, right? What Kyle Dubas is doing is he is setting the table. Realize in 2 years, the Penguins will only have four of the current players on the entire roster under contract. One of those is Chris Letang. One is Ryan Graves. One of those is not Sidney Crosby. So it really the clock, set your atomic clock. 2 years from yesterday, the Penguins go nuts. The Penguins should be on a plane, not an airplane, but on a platform or on the plane to the next level. 2 years from now, or they're going to be wandering the abyss. If they are not set up for the next steps in 2 years, they're in real trouble. Because think of it this way: what free agent is going to want to sign here if they're piecemealing a team? If they've got, let's say, Rutger McGroarty, Ville Koivunen, Owen Pickering, and Sidney Crosby on a farewell tour, who's going to sign with the Penguins? No. And at that point, then they are in real trouble. Obviously, they had a 13-member class last week, and you start hoping that Ben Kindle, Will Horkoff, Billy Zonin can step in. But the reality is Horkoff is probably 3 years away. I think Zonin's going to be the surprise of training camp. Challenge. He's probably not ready. He's probably a little too green, a little too raw, but he's got all of the tools to be, even as a rookie, he could be a third or fourth line winger and sort of learn the NHL game. He's got that sort of horse strength to him already. And as he fills out, going to get better and better. So we'll see. And of course, Ben Kindle is a slick, high hockey IQ, high motor center, probably needs to grow, needs to fill out a bit more before he can execute that sort of game at the NHL level. But you never know. No one expected, including Ray Shero back in 2006, no one expected Jordan Staal to make the club and never leave, but he forced his way. You never know when a guy is going to do that. So what do I think of the free agency class, Brandon, to get to your question now that I've set the table? It's a solid C. I personally, if I'm in the GM's chair, I probably don't re-sign Tomasino, especially knowing if I'm close on Anthony Mantha. I didn't think Tomasino showed enough improvement from beginning to end. He's got a nice wrist shot release, but for my analysis, for my take, Tomasino didn't offer enough to help them win when he wasn't scoring, which was, a good chunk of last season. Kyle Dubas doubled down on that one, giving Tomasino another shot at it. It's not a bad move. I mean, really, what's the worst that happens? The worst that happens for the Penguins is they get a little bit frustrated or they don't think he deserved to make the NHL roster. They send him to Wilkes-Barre and they eat about 600,000 of salary cap space. That's the worst that can happen. So that's not exactly earth-shattering or end of the world if that happens. I suppose Mantha is a decent enough signing because if he works, then you've got a heck of a trade chip that you will get a second round pick for him all day long if he works. If he doesn't work, you're out $2.5 million, and perhaps Tom Werner or John Henry picks up the phone one morning in a little bit of a bad mood and asks you what you were thinking giving away that much money. That's the worst that can happen. It certainly doesn't affect you, right? If John Henry is mad at Kyle Dubas, doesn't affect you or I suppose. It's okay. I mean, I thought the Alex Nedeljkovic trade was both warranted, but it also leaves the Penguins exposed in so much as Joel Blomqvist ready for the NHL, like a regular, sustained NHL role. He sort of face planted last season. In fact, sort of probably isn't necessary in that sentence. Sergei Murashov is probably the best of the Penguins goalies. He most likely has more maturation, more learning to do at the NHL level, beginning to really anticipate the top level players and how those shots are going to come at him, little curves, little deceptions. Those things he definitely didn't face too much of in the ECHL. Had a limited taste in the AHL. He's a great candidate for a midseason call up. But what do you do in the meantime? Blomqvist, the Penguins are kind of dunking Blomqvist in the deep end with that trade, unless they sign someone else, kind of a veteran journeyman to compete with Blomqvist in case Yola isn't as good as the Penguins need him to be. What are my thoughts on the fleecing of Carolina, Bo Smith asks. I assume you mean the K'Andre Miller trade, in which the Rangers get a first-round pick, top 10 protected, and a second-round pick, and then gave him $60 million. Well, if Miller grows into the player that he can and should be, it's a fair trade. In fact, if he grows into the player he can or should be, Carolina wins the deal. If he doesn't, and there is significant risk after several years now, hasn't reached that level, and there's risk that Carolina could lose that trade. I like Eric Tulsky a lot. I like him as a person, and I like him as a GM. He is doing what Carolina and teams like Carolina have to do to be successful, and that is take a few gambles. You're going to lose a couple, as they did with Rantanen, but they rescued that deal. Logan Stankoven signed how much did he get paid? He got a 6-year deal yesterday. He is made for Carolina. So they rescued that one. Let's see here. Let me get down to Penguins fan. Okay, Penguins fan is proposing a Brian Rust trade here. The Penguins trade Brian Rust to Buffalo for the Sabres 2026 first-round pick and Bo Byram Is that a good deal for Pittsburgh? Well, yeah, it's not a good deal for Buffalo. Buffalo is going to get a forward and a defenseman, capable NHL forward and defenseman for Byram. Uh, I don't think Byram is that good to merit just a one-on-one trade for Brian Rust. I think Rust will actually bring more than Byram. As Buffalo was finding out, the market was kind of soft for Brian Rust. Or I mean for Bo Byram rather. Yeah, it's a good deal for the Penguins? Heck yeah. Bad deal for Buffalo. Help us now 1105 says be happy other teams are paying high prices. That can only help Dubas's return for Rust Raquel and Eric. Yes. Let me explain a little something. I wish I could. Can I show you the article I am working on? Let's see here. Where is it? Where is it? Oh, I closed it out. The article I didn't get finished before the live chat really is that exact topic. Let me pull it up. And you can see that I am not fibbing. Dun, dun, dun. Okay, there it is. So I get to share the screen here. Y'all get a quick look there. I of course have to edit, but all signs point to a Penguins trade. Kyle Dubas is definitely setting up his larger strategy. Now, sometimes teams make the trade in June and then hit the free agent market in July to patch holes, to get what they need, they do it trade, then free agency. The Penguins are in a different situation, a little bit unique to the Penguins' history, whereas the Penguins are benefiting by waiting. The more Dubas holds back, now it is a poker. It's not a poker game. It's a game of chicken. Where if he waits too long, he's going to lose. So he's going to have to know when to, know when to hold him, know when to fold him, but also know when to make the trade. All signs definitely point to a trade of Ricard Raquel now that Anthony Mantha has signed a contract confirmed by the team. I don't know how or why you would have Anthony Mantha and Philip Tomasino on your roster if your top six is full. One of those two guys needs top 6 minutes. Actually, both of them need it. One of them will get it. Perhaps both of them. Maybe that's what Tomasino is top 6 insurance if they trade both Raquel and Brian Rust. As teams lost out on players, as the Florida Panthers kept everybody, as Vegas snagged Mitch Marner, as Boston got Victor Arvidsson, as Anaheim signed Mikhail Granlund, as Edmonton signed, to a lesser extent, Andrew Mangiapane. Who am I missing? Oh, Vancouver keeps Brock Besser in a little bit of soccer. The Islanders get Jonathan Drouin. Who's left on the market but Nikolai Ehlers? And Ehlers has it down to a few teams. A decision is expected this afternoon, at which point, Dubas has no incentive to make a trade now unless the team finds out they are not getting Ehlers and they come to the table with a big offer. In the meantime, Dubas can sit back, let Ehlers make his decision, and then Ricard Raquel becomes the belle of the ball, last scoring winger available of any note, rather. It's amazing how much better guys get when they are the only option, the only game in town, and it's him or nothing. So, yeah, Dubas has played this one well so far. Let's see what he can get. But I think at this point, if I'm Ricard Raquel, I'm not buying green bananas in Pittsburgh. That's for sure. With with Noah Dobson dealt, with DeAndre Miller dealt, with the LA Kings, Ken Holland, I say this respectfully, and I'm gonna be pretty harsh, even I'm trying not to make it so harsh. Ken Holland looks like an old GM today. He looks like a guy who doesn't understand time, looks like a guy who is playing 5 years in the past. Signing Brian Dumoulin and Cody Ceci to lengthy contracts. Dumoulin got 3 years, Ceci 4. Fans piled on. Brian Dumoulin perfectly solid for Seattle. No criticisms of him. You know, he's perfectly solid. He's making perfectly solid salary as well. For whatever reason, Cody Ceci is like, Twitter hockey Twitter, yeah. Cody Ceci is hockey Twitter's whipping boy. No matter what he does, he's a bad player. I mean, Penguins fans have seen the guy up close. He's solid. Like, no, he's not a top pairing guy. Perhaps he's been cast in that role too many times in his career, and he takes some shrapnel for those instances in which he didn't live up to the role he needed him to play. But if you limit his role, he's fine. However, you sign both of those guys if you're LA. I wonder if that takes LA out of any potential deal for Erik Karlsson. You had to wonder where I was going with that, didn't you? Believe me, I was bringing it all back full circle. I thought LA would be a perfect fit for, Karlsson. St. Louis makes the deal. They, deal away Zachary Balduke and get, Logan Mayhew. They solve their, they get a good defenseman there. Obviously, Montreal getting Dobson. Florida already has Seth Jones. Dallas can't afford a free lunch. Anaheim can afford a free lunch, but would Karlsson want to go there? Do they want him? That team is going to have a lot of offensive talent and a whole lot of nothing else. I mean, really look at Anaheim's roster. I'm just kind of going through the lines in my head, and they don't have nearly enough hard to play against to be a successful team. You get Granlund and guys they snagged free agency wise. I can't think of anybody who's a jerk that they've got. So it's going to be tough to deal, Eric Carl. The Penguins, that game of musical chairs, the music is stopping and the Penguins are still standing. Let's see here. Okay, there's Brandon's question about Philip Hollander. Let's dive into this here. I'm going to just make a little graphic here by myself. Okay, so Penguins line. I think Hollander should be in the NHL, pending watching him play in preseason and training. He very well could not be worthy of it. That's not my expectation, though. My expectation is that they brought him over. He was making good money in Sweden, but they brought him over. So at this point, fell off of the Penguins roster. I'm going to add Mantha and Tomasino back, and let's see what we can do with the lines here. Because boy, who plays left wing? I guess does now Mantha is left-handed, but he's kind of a right winger. Maybe they put him on the left wing with Crosby and Koivunen, and then you've got McGroarty and Malkin, and who's on and Rust. Let's put Rust there. So then, oh, I'm not writing this so you can read it. Oops. Yeah, you probably can't read that chicken scratch, can you? So then the third line, I suppose we've got a right meat now. Tomasino. Who's the third line center? Tommy Novak. And then who is the right wing on the third line? Eek. I guess Tomasino is the right wing on the third line. And Kevin Hayes is the left winger. Tristan Brose has to come in here too. So I'm going to put Hollander and Brose. This is your third line kind of, this is your mix. You have 5 players in 3 spots for the third line there. How do you get through that? Perhaps they can find a way to move Kevin Hayes. You'd hate to put that kind of salary in Wilkes-Barre. You'd put that kind of player in Wilkes-Barre. All right, I'm just making sure the microphone doesn't kick in. Yeah, Hollander should be a third line left wing. If he really pops, maybe he takes that spot from Anthony Mantha with Crosby or Malkin. Boy, to there's a lot to figure out, a lot of wins or a lot of decisions to make. Kate asks, Vuki hasn't been in the behind the scenes videos. He is still with the Penguins, correct? You know, Kate, I hadn't noticed that. Certainly haven't made an announcement, but you're right. I haven't seen Vuki. I don't know. Have you have brought something to my attention, and I will dig into that. If there's any story there, 'cause, certainly Dubas has was high on him. Like he touted him and the salary cap wizardry that he could execute. Perhaps now the Penguins don't have any salary cap wizardry necessary. Maybe he's been reassigned, or I do not. Okay, Brandon comes back. What? I don't even. Oh, Harvey Pinard would crap on the Wilkes-Barre Penguins games. Yeah. Look, Harvey Pinard is one of those little balls of energy. If he were 2 inches taller, he'd be in the NHL regularly. He's just that much too short. Uh, hey, again, for all of the metrics and the player development that the Penguins have instituted over the last couple of years, if they can get an extra half step, extra 12% like they got Joona Koppanen, who knows with he's got hands. 7th round pick. 7th. And there he is in the NHL. Let's see here. Big Joe. Haven't heard too much about the new defensive assistant coach. What are your thoughts on uh, which one are you talking about? Because you got Mike Stothers, you've got Todd Nelson, you've got Nick Bonito, and you've got Rich Kloon. Now, Kloon's be cast in a developmental role. Todd Nelson's going to run the power play. I don't know if Nelson or Stothers is going to run the defense. Go back and listen to what Dubas Shelley wrote the story for me, so it's not burned into my mind. Which one of those guys is going to run the defenseman, and which you're going to run the forward? I have no, right. This is a coaching staff besides Todd Nelson that is respectfully really short on experience. I don't know how any of them conduct themselves. I don't know their strengths, weaknesses yet. That really is the best I can tell you. Dubas, again, besides Todd Nelson, Dubas got a lot of guys who are kind of green in terms of Toby. What do I think of? I have no idea what you're talking about, Toby. Let's go to Kate. Okay, Kate repeated her question there. Oh, okay. Toby kind of restated. What do I think a trade return on Brian Rust could look like? Okay. Going on Dubas's words, the price would be very high. I think Brian Rust becomes a three asset trade definition. We're talking high draft pick, prospect, and player. Of course, it can become a two asset trade if the pick is high enough, if the player is good enough, the prospect is good enough, whatever. That's what I will not speculate on specific players and what he can bring back. I think that's Rust's value at the outset as a three asset that can become a two as the value of the other two assets increases. Okay, Michelle. First, what is the penalty for teams over the salary cap? Well, you just, I mean, they can take away draft picks if you violate the salary cap rules. In season, you can't play. You have to forfeit if you're over the salary cap. So, what is the penalty? That's the penalty. With that being said, do I think the Pens would make a trade to Montreal for Kirby Doc to help Montreal get under the salary cap? No, no. Kirby Doc, with the knee injuries, not shown enough to be. Montreal would have to pay to take Kirby Doc, and look, the Penguins already have. The Penguins right now have 15 NHL forwards. 15. That doesn't count guys like Tristan Brose, who should be, pounding on the door for the NHL next season. No, I have no. I was, a year or two ago, I was a proponent of acquiring Doc, but not now. Let's go to Shane. Since winning isn't going to be the best predictor, as fans, how should we judge if Muse is doing a good job? Boy, that's a hell of a question. As much as I want to tell you how to judge Dan Muse, I'm peeing in the on that one. No matter what I tell you right now, fans are gonna be all jumping ugly by November when the Penguins are 10 games out to, 10 points out of a playoff spot or, the first bad decision. All of the, armchair guys who know much more than the rest of us are gonna start, "Oh, I knew they shouldn't have hired Dan Muse. They should have went and got, Mitch Love. I said they should have hired Mitch Love back then, and I've been proven right." I'm already ready for all that garbage all season long. Um, and if they'd hired Mitch Love, it would have been, I knew they should have hired yeah, Peter Laviolette. They needed an experienced coach. Or they should have hired Jay Woodcroft. No matter who the Penguins hire, things are going to go poorly. I think what we have to look at is the progression of some of the young players and the reclamation projects. That's first. Two, and I will have to be your conduit on number two. The vibe in the room. Dan Muse is going to have his work cut out for him, his hands full on keeping vibe and the atmosphere up because he's going to have Sidney Crosby. Sidney Crosby doesn't like losing very much, and it's going to wear on him. They're not very good. So that's kind of how I let me fix my screen here. That's how I'll be judging Dan Muse. Gable Fisk. To what extent crapshoot aspect of the draft be fixed if they raise that age to 19? Superstars could be granted the exceptional status like they do in junior hockey, and still enter at 18. Well, Gable, technically, you can draft a 19-year-old. I don't know. That you're trying to protect the teams from themselves with that rule, which getting them to protect themselves, there's always gonna be somebody who's like, "Well, we can figure it out better than they can." That's such a hypothetical, I really don't see it. I saw a lot of talk about that last week, and I didn't know where it stemmed from. It's superciliousness to me. Am I starting to cut out? Oh, no. I don't see anybody else saying that, the sound is cutting out. Okay, I am gonna start at the bottom, though, so that way if the sound is cutting out, you all can, let me know. Also, I figured out one of the other problems was the internet access. I've got a gig of internet, and it still gets a little wonky sometimes. Okay, Ryan Driscoll, does possible expansion in '27 make roster construction and assets even more difficult moving forward, or are the Pens in the perfect spot? Art. Let me fix it. I'm gonna fix it all here. Okay, now we're back to the, we're just straight audio. Alright, let me pull this closer here so the sound is a little better. Okay, so, the expansion drafts do protect the young players, but go ahead and try to predict the Penguins' 2027 roster from this point. I can barely predict the 26 roster. We're talking 27. That's gonna be crazy. Get back to me, but I would suspect a large portion of the Penguins roster by 2027 will be exempt from the expansion draft. Go to Kyle. Excited to see what Dubas can fetch with Payton and the lackluster free agent market. Who knows? Maybe even Graves and Jari can get dished. Thanks for all you do. I appreciate it. Hey, I did see Kyle's question. Kyle, I saw your question on the Tuesday night chat about buying a gift subscription for PHN Plus. Just get that person's email address, fill out their contact, put your credit card in, and away you go. That's the best. Okay, Lars. The good news about this upcoming season is that I might be able to afford Penguins tickets. Yeah, I suspect that aftermarket ticket is not gonna be hard to come by. Ethan, maybe the question was answered already. What's stopping Dubas from swinging for the fences? With our available cap space, why do we continue to sign for liners? Oh boy, Ethan. You're new here, aren't you? What's stopping Dubas from swinging for the fences? Well, timing, for one. You don't want, I mean, it would, first of all, it would kind of be silly because the Penguins are 3 years away from really beginning to contend for a playoff spot, 5 years away from being a contender, and that's if they do everything right between now and then. So you sign a free agent for 7 years, what's gonna happen in the meantime? He's gonna make your team just that much better, which means your draft pick is that much worse. And so you get kinda stuck in the middle, and you get on that treadmill, having to sign free agents, and then when their contract is up, if you have made all of the right decisions at the draft, by the time your kids are ready, the free agents are gone or are leaving or are in their mid-30s, and you've got a couple more years left of the downside of their career. The timing doesn't add up. That's why the Penguins aren't swinging for the fences now. You have to clear the underbrush before you can begin planting the forest, right? Let's get to Michael. Please save the Penguins, Mario Lemieux. Yeah, you haven't really heard anything about that, have you? I'm just saying. Put two and two together there a little bit. Brian asks, at present state, am I optimistic or pessimistic in regard to the organization's trajectory? Well, I suppose you're asking me if I think the Penguins are on the right path and right track or not. I think this off season or into next season is the fulcrum. This is where Dubas will set himself up for success or set himself up for failure. What he does with Raquel or how he replaces Malkin or which of these draft picks begin to pan out, that will tell us right now. Look, this is literally, if I were to make an analogy, Brian, Kyle Dubas just got home from IKEA. He's got a box of a couch with all the pieces and the parts, and he's just now opening the box and dumping everything on to the middle of the floor and starting to sort out and look for the instructions on where to go next. So optimistic, pessimistic, neither of those words I think are applicable right now. This is truly, let's see what he does next. Let's see what he does next. I don't think he expected to have 13 draft picks Friday and Saturday. I think he expected to be able to deal quite a few of those, but the market just wasn't conducive to it. You saw the trade price for J.J. Peterka. You saw the trade price for Keandre Miller. And the one aspect that maybe none of us saw coming. Here's a pearl of wisdom for Dan, from Dan. We talked about teams being able to keep their players with the salary cap spike. Maybe what we didn't see and should have is how aggressive the top teams could be to acquire players, how hungry they would be, not for veteran players, but younger players. Basically, what happened to the Pittsburgh Pirates in 2016, 17 or so? Besides a terrible owner who reneged on multiple promises, other teams, big teams, figured out what the Pirates knew with the sabermetrics and the analytics. The big teams figured out what the Pirates could do or were doing. They could do it better. From that standpoint, kind of draw the parallel. Right now, the Penguins are a bad team. So a team like Carolina can pay more for Keandre Miller. They've got more urgency to do so than can the Penguins. Not monetarily speaking. The Penguins could afford $60 million, no problem. But in terms of giving up a first and a second round pick, that would be GM malpractice for Dubas to do at this moment for a defenseman you're not 100% sold on. Or giving up, what did Buffalo get for Peterka? No, I guess they didn't get. Well, yeah, they kind of got a couple of solid roughhouse players and a good draft pick from Utah. Again, let's just say Dubas really liked Peterka. Are you giving up Owen Pickering and let's say Ville Koivunen for him? I'd say no. Oh, toss in the second round pick too. So, right. Or a late first round pick, whatever it was for Peterka. That's the problem the Penguins are finding themselves in, is these good teams now have cap space too. All right. Why did the Penguins draft a left shooting defenseman in the first round? Because they wanted Ben Kindle. They thought Ben Kindle was better. They traded down to get a couple of more picks. The defenseman, that you're probably referencing, the Jackson Smiths and Maturka was a right-handed shot, but the other guys were taken in the teens. I don't think they were that good, to be quite frank. They weren't franchise-changing defensemen. They were second pair kind of guys at their ceiling. Uh, we can talk about drafting Will Horkoff at 24 when most of the professional scouts had him in the 40s. We can talk about that, but you didn't get a defenseman because it wouldn't have made sense. Tomorrow, I have no idea what you're talking about. You got to give me a complete thought there. Let's go to Chicken Alec King. If Philip Hollander doesn't make the cut, does he head back to Sweden? That's an interesting question. I suppose it's a conversation between he and the organization. If he feels like he's close and he stays and he goes over and he gets run over, he's like, wow, I don't belong here, then I suppose he could go back. Hey, Brandon, thank you very much. Yeah, Brandon, let me know the audio was a bit chippy. So hopefully it's better now. Is the audio better now that I've unplugged everything? I will, in fact, go buy a new mixer today. Rest in peace, you magnificent. Okay, let me get up here. Let's go to Craig. I really hope it's Rust they trade over Raquel, just because there's an insane obsession with Rust by the fan base. He's a mid player, and there's no need for him to be a lifetime Penguin just because. How many goals did Rust have last season? 35? Mid players don't score 35 goals. They don't score 28, 30, 35 in consecutive seasons. They don't play with grit and tenacity that Rust plays with. And if those aren't good enough for you, they don't have a mid, doesn't have the leadership that Brian Rust has in that locker. Sidney Crosby is a great leader. Sidney Crosby was born Sidney Crosby. And there's always a little bit of a disconnect there between rank and file and great players. Uh, and I'm not saying there's no reason to in any way downgrade Crosby. I'm saying Brian Rust can provide a different type of leadership. Brian Rust can say some things to guys that Sidney Crosby probably can't say because Brian Rust was a third round pick. Because Brian Rust was a fourth liner bouncing back and forth between the AHL and the NHL. He was a bottle rocket for the first couple of years of his career. He would make a good defensive play in the defensive zone and just race up the ice and fire a 30-foot wrist shot into the belly of the goalie, would hold on to it, and they would skate off. He had zero offensive production, talent, ability, but he kept working at his game. And from almost nothing, no one saw it coming. He becomes this top line winger that a lot of teams look at him. That guy can help my team. Not dependent on Sidney Crosby. Does he deserve to be a lifetime Penguin just because? No one does. But there are advantages and real advantages to keeping Brian Rust. However, Craig, I do sort of sympathize with you. You get sort of tired of. I know some of the fans can get a little over the top, and it can be a turn off at times. You should check out my Twitter feed. All the stuff I get tossed at me all day. Anyway, so that I think Philip Larson could potentially be a goalie in the NHL for the Penguins. Well, I did write about Larson a couple times. I guess you haven't read my scouting reports on him on PHN Sebastian. So I'll give you a freebie here. And the answer to that is last year, he looked to me, I mean, he's got great numbers. He's stiff. A lot of his saves and kind of the higher save percentage because he's making saves on his own rebounds. He doesn't control the puck well enough for my taste. In fact, not just not control the puck can hit him and launch. Like it, you can see some rebounds get to the circle off of him. He doesn't absorb pucks very well. Can they fix it? Andy Chiodo and John Elkins, maybe. I mean, that was his first professional year in North America last year. I would have thought perhaps he could have worked on that overseas, go back in Sweden, but maybe they can work. I mean, he's a big goalie who moves well. If they can get him to be more of a puck absorber and knock off those very rough edges, why not? Oh, Stankoven did Stankoven get 8 million? That is a deal for the young man. Marco says, thanks for doing this. Listen, it is my pleasure. Wanted to ask if you got a chance to see the new prospects participate in drills and development camp. What my first impressions are. Well, no, because development camp starts tomorrow. So, yes, I will have full coverage from the Penguins development camp Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, and Monday. Although Shelly and I were talking, I think we're going to blow off Saturday because I can only watch guys do skating drills so many days in a row. I might hop on the motorcycle and then just bounce Friday, get lost on Saturday. I've got to be back Sunday night to do TV. And then Monday is the scrimmage. I will happily let you know exactly how they look. Any movement on the Anthony Mantha front? Sunshine Man, where the hell you been? It's on Pittsburgh hockey. Yes, they signed a couple hours ago. Yeah, so they moved past the finish line. Come on, Sunshine. Gary Rogers. Well, it's either going to be another sick year. Dubas is a cheapskate and won't get anyone good, says Gary. I wouldn't blame Sid if he decided to leave. Such a waste. Dubas needs to be replaced. Well, Gary, I'm surprised you're on this chat. That is certainly a take. It takes into account nothing I've imparted or that we know, the situation, the context, the details, any, wherewithal there. It certainly is a take, Gary. Yes, that is why Kyle Dubas didn't make a big play for Mitch Marner is because he didn't want to spend the money. Gary, do me a favor, hang around Pittsburgh hockey now a little while longer. Keep reading the articles. Let it sink in a little bit to you. I promise, if you're open to it, your opinion might begin to change just a wee bit. All right, Ryan says, my man Dan, it would seem we are in line for some major trades, probably Rattel and Carlson. Assume some sort of dumps of Chari, Heinen, Hayes, Lizotte. I see fit in Detroit, Carolina, Columbus, LA. You guys realize Blake Lizotte is 26 years old, right? I see no reason to salary dump him. That guy is a fourth-line grinder all day long. He's the kind of guy you keep around. He helps you win. He's young. He can be around. He makes peanuts. What does he make? $2 million? Yeah, you keep Lizotte. Right. Kevin Hayes 1 year left at $3.5 million. If you can figure out a way to move him, yes, because I think his spot would be adequately filled by a sub 25er. Danton Heinen, yeah, Heinen, you're trying to move as well. Nolachari is certainly an interesting case. He has value as a fourth line shot blocking, teeth missing, cut on the nose, go do whatever is necessary to win sort of guy. The Penguins don't necessarily have a need for that. Yeah, I would suspect you'll see a Chari maybe traded for like future considerations or a mid-round draft pick, or another team's like, yeah, you know what? I like that deal for Mikel. Why don't you toss in a Char? That's sort of the way I see that. Uh, yeah. Let's get to some new folks here. William, what RFAs do I think the Penguins could still realistically trade for this offseason? You're right. I was about to say, hey, didn't you read my story yesterday? And then I realized Arthur Kaliev signed late last, or actually this morning. Kaliev signed this morning in Ottawa. Jacob Pelletier signed at 30 in the morning, Tampa Bay. What Tampa is doing at 1:30 in the morning, I have no idea. And then who was the third one? First one off the board. Either way, my three non-qualified RFA trade targets have been signed. Now you're talking actual RFA, and that becomes a very difficult question because teams are moving to sign them. Byram is probably the biggest name that most fans are going to think of. I I don't know. I'm going to have to punt on that one because Peterka being traded. McLeod was signed in Buffalo, so Buffalo had a couple of RFA centers. Uh, Lenius wasn't one of them. There was one more that they had to get under lock and key after Cloud. Oh, I'm going through the list in my head as fast as I can, and none jump out at me. But I am gonna look again and just put it, pen and paper in front of me after we do this live chat. If there's one or two that I should do, I will in fact write that story. All right, okay. Let me get further up here. Okay. Let's go to Connor Haberland. How many of these moves are AHL? Understanding Mantha and Brazeau are NHL roster spots. Do McGroarty and Koivunen make the roster on opening night after we saw? Yes. McGroarty and Koivunen, unless they come to training camp fat, dumb, and happy, there's no way they don't make the NHL roster. It's the other guys that maybe get blocked. It's the Tristan Bros and the Avery Hayes that get blocked. I think Pickering is also on the NHL roster. I don't know that Brazeau is going to be. I don't know that Tomasino is indeed an NHL roster spot. They give him $1.75. He should. He should be on the NHL roster. Yeah, the Penguins are a hodgepodge of guys who could be in the AHL for other teams. So that's probably as best I can put it. We're going to toss a few pucks on the ice in training camp and let the guys figure it out from there. Big Joe, does it scare you that down the road, all the money that I see being given to Granlund, Dumoulin, and Cody C contracts, free agency is a double? It doesn't scare me. It's not my money. What do I care? What do I care if LA spends $8 million on Dumoulin and CC? I'd like to be in that position, quite frankly. I'd like to be in that position to spend the money. Let's see here. Okay, so now I have to go back to the bottom. Sebastian says, I don't understand the fan base wanting to deal Lizotte. He is young and showed flashes of a good third liner. Yeah, he is endlessly useful is Blake Lazon. Energy, tenacity, scrap, speed. Every year he has 1 week every season, 1 week where he provides all of his offensive contributions. He might have 7 or 10 points a season, and 5 or 7 of those points are coming in 1 week. And then the other 35 weeks of the season, he's a scrappy fourth liner. Yeah, I kind of don't get that. Let's go to Matt. Matt's been cranking out the videos. I look on my YouTube page, and there's all these videos. There's videos of all of the draft picks and the free agent signings yesterday. So just check out the PHN channel. Now, Matt's also smart. He knows I pay him per video. Matt, don't max out my credit card just yet. Anyway, here's Matt's question from Flux CC. Do I think the Dukes will try to leverage a team that needs to get above the salary floor, like San Jose, to try to move some of the bottom sixers? Interesting. That would be interesting. Yeah. Well, now bear in mind, Eric Carlson can't go back to San Jose because they're eating $1.5 million of his contract. So that's out. I don't know. Oh yeah, Columbus signed Provorov, so take Columbus out of the Eric Carlson mix as I noodle that through. I suppose so. As good a thought as any, right? See here, Ryan says it's heavily being reported that Isaac Howard is close to being traded to Edmonton. Damn, I wanted him. Great play Edmonton here because Edmonton has more talent than they can afford. They need some cheap talent. So yeah, that kind of goes back to what I was saying when the top teams are now stepping into Kyle Dubas's territory here. It was supposed to be Dubas being able to go after the guys like Isaac Howard and Peterka and Andre Miller. But instead, it's the Stanley Cup contenders doing this. It is a market shift, to be sure. Oh, Ethan, no, Ethan, I promise you it was. I've got the headphones right here. Yeah, the mic, in fact, was plugged in, unfortunately. It's just I'm sitting now closer, and as an old radio guy, I know how to project. Maybe I did screw up. I don't know. Maybe it was the internet. But I did catch a bad channel on the mixing board this morning when I tested everything out. The first and third channels were going cattywampus on me. Okay, that is still a bit in and out, even without the microphone. So clearly it's the internet at this point, or it's the software, which I can do nothing about. Okay, well, I thank you all for hanging in there. I'm going to wrap this up because I've got some stories to write, some things to do, and some people to just grind my teeth and try to be a manager and a leader rather than just telling them do better. All right, kids, have fun. Thanks. We'll have it all fixed up by next week if, in fact, it can be fixed. Later.